Okay, welcome back, everybody. For the last session of what I think has been a T-Tech conference to beat all T-Tech conferences that I've been to. It's been a wonderful event. Unfortunately, we don't have Andy Foster with us. He's unable to attend. So we're going to jump straight to Jim Scully, who's going to remind us that we are not just building things, we are building futures. Jim Scully from ThinkPlace. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'm not Andy Foster, although I am from Wellington, and I think half of the Wellington crew have left to catch the planes on the way back. Oh yeah, there's a couple of people at the back. So it's Wednesday, July, middle of winter, right? A young boy's just turned 5 and he walks to school on his first day. A farmer stands at his gate seeing his stock go to market. 2 people go on their first date ever. An old woman goes to visit a friend, and a family sees their loved one off on the final journey. Now, what have all of these people got in common, all these humans? Well, first off, it's not 2026, it's 1870. The other thing they've got in common is that they all went across this bridge. This bridge, some might recognise it, maybe anyone? Near Hampton, the oldest bridge on State Highway 1, built in 1869 by John Turnbull Thompson. They used to build bridges out of timber back then. He decided that they needed stone and iron. So they all went across this bridge. And there's been about 120 to 170 million crossings, according to my mate Claude. Another bridge, I'm about to drive over it in an hour or so. Every time I go over this bridge, I hear clunk clunk. There's 2 expansion joints in this bridge. Any mechanical engineers in the room? They sat outside my window at Repco Engineering during a strike. We built them and I had to sandblast them when the strike was over. So that bridge is 43 years old, I think. So what I've been hearing is, you know, there's a whole lot of old structures. I heard Shamabel talk about that yesterday, old structures and dumb roads and dumb infrastructure. But what I've heard at this conference is those old structures have got new possibilities. The people in this room are layering on tech and, you know, going from passive to active, silence to sensing, dumb to smart and intelligent. That's what I was kind of hearing. And I've heard this theme all the way through of making sure that you keep the user and the human. So when John Turnbull Thompson designed and built that bridge way back, the Waiana Karua Bridge, South Branch, you know, he just built it for horse and carts. He didn't imagine Corollas and Teslas, but they're there. And we've heard about autonomous vehicles will be going across that. So you're creating infrastructure today that's creating possibilities for people in the future. When I got asked by Kim if I wanted to speak here, I thought, heck, I left my engineering behind a long time ago. I left IT behind a while ago. But I thought, you know what? I'm writing a book and I'm in a room full of the people I'm writing it about. The book's called Shapers, and quite simply, who are they and who are you? Shapers are people who create possibilities and expand the possibility space into the future. I was kind of motivated to write the book because of hoarders who tend to capture the future, limit it, weaponize it, and just really keep it to themselves. So when I thought about this group, you are shaping infrastructure and layering infrastructure upon infrastructure today and creating different possibilities in the future. So a design thinking framework, there's been a few Venn diagrams to date. This is a classic by a guy called Jay Doblin out of Chicago quite a few years ago. And we've heard a lot about it in this session. So what's possible from a technology perspective, what's viable from a business perspective? When I was in the telco industry, we'd come up with a new technology like CDMA, and then we'd create a service. And we'd bounce around, and then we'd think about the user at some point. With design thinking human-centered, we say actually think about the user early, right up front. And I'll talk about that, but maybe a quick little example. My business partner met a guy who was responsible for these. Has anyone been in an MRI? Quite a few. My daughter has, I haven't. Just shout out, what's it like? Horrible? Why? What's the experience? Yeah, noisy, hot, claustrophobic, and they hum, apparently, like there's a bit of vibration. So he went on a human-centered design course over at Stanford, the D School, and he thought, you know what, I'll go out and stand, I'll get a user perspective, I'll stand outside a ward, not just any ward. He decided to stand outside a children's ward. And what he saw was kids who had chronic conditions, so this wasn't their first visit, they were freaked out, their parents were stressed out because they had to get them there and be with them. The hospital staff were anxious because these kids had to be sedated. The throughput was terrible. And his idea was this. Variations on the theme, right? He didn't change the smart technology, he just had a bit of smart thinking and shifted the experience. The kids now turn up, this is a few years ago, they don't mind coming there. In fact, some of them look forward to it. The sedation rates have gone right down, the throughput's gone right up, all because he took a user's perspective, looked at it truly through their eyes. So I thought, that's medical, I better talk about transport. Flipping thinking, I was involved with Sydney Trains 10 years ago, and we were looking at their customer operating model. More trains were going through the network before Metro was coming along. And they had a real challenge. They had incidents happening, a whole lot of stuff going on. That simple diagram looks incredibly simple. So from moving trains or tin cans around the rail to moving customers and people. But what they did was they looked at everything differently. They looked at their stations, they heard they weren't safe, they had a clear line of sight, they painted them white, they well lit them, they took all the nooks and crannies away, so they're safe at night. Anyone from Sydney? Yeah. Their staff, would go out, you'll remember this, they'll go out, blow the whistle, wave the flag, something like in that order, and then disappear into one of those cubby holes. They locked all those doors. They couldn't do that, so the staff are out on the station in Central, they're up on platforms. So they switched everything around, they recruited differently. So the other staff they recruited were moving trains. They wanted to have customer service baked in. Thinking about Greg's talk in this room before, crisis management, they weren't very good at crisis management because when an incident happened, their signalers, their incident response, their customer communications was all over the place. So, because they flipped the paradigm, they came up with the Rail Operating Centre, they got the business case across the line. That's me in a hard hat. This is just before it opened. And that's like 8 years ago, I think, state of the art. But they flipped everything, right? So now a big incident happens, they're all together, they can stand things up really fast. Their customer communications is way better, so they can communicate. As a result of this and many other changes they did, their customer satisfaction went from 78% to 92% and held. At the same time, their volumes increased through the network. Their flow got a lot better. They've concentrated on flow, because anyone in the rail industry will know that it's the dwell time that really matters. The more volume you're pushing through, the less dwell time, and that reduced, right? So they did all of that and held it. Now, Metro's come along and probably changed the game, but it was a major undertaking. Another quick framework we use all the time: voice of intent, voice of expertise, that often dominates and the user comes last. But in the co-design era, there was too much voice of lived experience, voice of design, and the experts were left out in the cold. We always say, use all four voices, involve them all. They don't have to all be in the same room, but they're all part of the project and they're along on the journey. And then, you know, if you do that, then you're hitting the viability, desirability, feasibility, and equitable outcomes. And I do pro bono work around the world, done this in Africa, done it in high tech. It's just, as I was saying earlier to Carol, dangerously obvious, right? But not done. Another quick project, again, 12 years ago. A few of the NZTA people are here, but quite a few have left. So NZTA were looking at the Rimataka Hill Road, and they wanted to get a perspective of users. It was the first time they'd really done this. They're putting a business case up. And we found, talking to users on either side of the hills and on the hill itself, for those who haven't had the pleasure of going up that hill, it's a pretty gnarly experience. Some people absolutely love it. And if you go up on the weekend, you'll see the motorcyclists sitting up the top going, yeah, that's pretty cool. Other people just tolerate and cope. And again, this is a few years ago, but we brought them all to life. Some people had to do it. Some people had a lifestyle. Some people had families. Some people had businesses and jobs or truckies. So they got brought to life. That's a persona. We don't use photos anymore. We sketch people, like I was doing earlier. But you kind of bring them to life and you can see, you know, an experience scale and what their goals and needs are. Now, that doesn't mean you have to design for all of those, because someone said there's competing, but at least they're in view, so you can think about it. A whole lot of principles, but this one, if you tap into user experience of the road, their rhythms, their rituals, and how they cope, then by default, you're in tune with the user and your solutions will be. Greg was here earlier and he had a similar graph. So this is another way in, another case. Why should you do this? Because the opportunity at the front end is really high to change your design, to figure things out, to do a simulation, to do a prototype. And the amount at stake is really low. Once you hit that point, I call it the slow-moving train wreck point, you're so emotionally tied and committed, you often don't change, you're not listening to change. So even if you're going, should we involve the user? Well, why not? Because that point up there is cheap money. That whole time. The big projects that some of you are involved in, the longer they go, the more open they are to fat tail risk and black swan events. If you shorten that period where you're actually delivering, you'll get a cleaner run when you're most vulnerable. I'm nearly finished this book, it's not that far away. If you want a complimentary copy, I'll leave this up at the end and just scan your details and see if the QR code that I created on Zapier and Brevo works. Oh, it does, it works, great, it's my first one. So just kind of finishing off, I thought, heck, I better look up transport. So I looked up a 1600 definition of transport, so it's transporter from French and Latin, and the physical movement of goods and people from one place to another. But did you know, in the 1600s, it also had an emotional movement. So when you think about smart tech, smart transport, the deeply human side of it's been baked in for hundreds of years already. So just finishing off, it's a Wednesday again. It's mid-July, it's middle of winter in Wellington, the wind's probably blowing still. But it's 2076. And there's a bunch of people thinking about you in this room. What are they thanking you for? Building things or creating better experiences? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jim. I'd like now to invite Carol to come back up, and Carol Schweiger from Carol Schweiger Consulting, and give us her views on how she has seen this conference. Thank you.
I'm going to apologize for my voice. I was yelling last night during the dinner just to talk to Doug next to me. So my voice is toast. But anyway, do we have the clicker?
Here it is.
Oh, beautiful. So this is just a very quick summary of a conference that I went to at the end of April in Istanbul. Every year, the ITS organization throughout Europe, the UK, and the Middle East does their own conference. And this one in Istanbul was at the end of April. And some of the things that I talked about yesterday morning actually came from that conference, a few of these things. But I was asked to just give a very quick summary. And the summary that I'm going to give you is just in one of the 4 topics that were covered during the Congress. Every ITS conference I've ever been to, everything sort of gets categorized in different buckets. And I'm going to talk about the multimodal mobility system management bucket. And at this point in the afternoon, after 2 days of a conference, I'm not sure that I understand what that means. But in any case, it's really about technology that supports mobility systems and us managing mobility. So that was one of the 4 topics. So on this slide, I'm just going to very briefly go through a few of the items. I was fortunate enough to be a rapporteur at the conference, which means that I was reporting on all of the sessions in this topic area of mobility systems. And when you're a rapporteur in these European congresses, you have to answer some questions. It's not just a summary of what you heard throughout the Congress. It's also what are the implications of what you heard. And this year, it went even a little bit further. What are the implications for policymakers, for example? What kinds of things need to change in terms of research? And so this time we went a little bit further. So the first thing I wanted to present was just what were the major things in this topic area that I heard. And probably most of you could have come up with this list. It's not earth-shattering, but a lot of discussion about how data today drives everything. So also on the digitalization and what that movement looks like within the transport sector and the technology sector, integrating modes which frankly, I don't know how many years we've been talking about that, but it comes up at every Congress, and it's just as important every year. We need to keep talking about that. Obviously, AI and automation was a big part of things. In this topic area, we were not looking at automated vehicles. We were looking at other kinds of automation. And it was mostly to support, again, the human side of things. Equity inclusion, I'm going to skip over that because I gave you enough about that. Co-design and co-creation, that has been at the forefront for the last several European Congresses for all the right reasons, and climate change and resilience. So we were asked to kind of look at, all right, what are the policy implications? Are there any kinds of trends that policymakers need to be aware of? And several key things came out. We keep talking about moving away from modes to mobility. I think I've been saying that for about 10 years now. So is that really a new thing? No. But what is new about it is the focus on the human side of it. Yes, we've talked about human-centered design for many, many years in the ITS sector, but it continues to be really a critical piece of everything. Multimodal integration, I alluded to how mobility as a service, which the term was coined about 12 years ago, how that never really came to fruition exactly the way it was intended, but that's not a bad thing. We learned a lot from a lot of pilots around the world, and we're now putting some of that learning into place, and we saw that at the conference. Let's see. And on the climate change side, this is an ongoing issue, and unfortunately one back home that we're simply not dealing with. We were also asked to talk about what are the barriers to moving forward, particularly with all those items on the last slide. We still have fragmented data, and that is critical. That came up during the Congress quite a bit. Sometimes we make it sound like everything's already integrated, the data's usable, we know who owns it. We've dealt with cybersecurity, and frankly, we're not quite there yet. These are some of the barriers. The interoperability is not necessarily there yet. We're getting better at it. On the governance side of things, we continue to say the technology works great, but it's everything else that we've got to work harder at, like the institutional part of it and the regulatory framework. In mobility as a service, for example, the regulatory aspect of that, nobody really figured that out at all. And that was a big lessons learned there. So we still have some barriers there. We're still not seeing the large-scale deployments because there is still many, many small pilots. One thing that you're probably aware of, when I put up that laundry list of European Commission-funded studies, it was a huge list, and those were only the ones that were really dealing with the social sciences as part of their project. They have a tendency to do these wonderful, really thoughtful projects and pick like 5 or 6 sites and pilot whatever they're building in those 5 or 6 sites. But what that means sometimes is nothing goes beyond the pilot phase, which is a bit disappointing. So we're still not seeing sort of this full-scale deployment like we would hope after all that pilot work. We've talked ad nauseum now about the insufficient early engagement, and then we're still finding some barriers on the data governance side. So again, this all comes from things I've said before, but we not only need to move from pilots to full deployments, they need to be scalable. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of these projects, they pick 5 or 6 completely different sites. But we're hoping that we understand more about the scalability down the road. The societal involvement we've talked a lot about. There is still a lot of discussion about standards. A lot of people think that's tremendously boring, but it's really important. And it's how we're going to overcome some of the data issues that we still have. So that was a significant discussion, along with data sharing as well. And then the interdisciplinary research, one of the questions I got yesterday morning was sort of, how do you get everybody in a room and you may not come to consensus, which happens most of the time, probably. And how do you deal with that? You still need all those different viewpoints so that interdisciplinary research that you're doing when you start a lot of ITS projects is still so important. And that's one of the elements that we've been talking about over these 2 days, that without certain disciplines, we're missing the point of the people that are going to be using the technologies. And then I'd already mentioned about the regulatory situation. So what are the key messages? Really, the barriers are really not so much technical, but much more on the governance and institutional side. So that's these are things that the European Commission is taking back and thinking about in their various funding programs that they have for ITS. Collaboration across the sectors. I think I mentioned in yesterday's talk that it's great to say we need an interdisciplinary team, but what if we have all never worked together before? We need frameworks that help us understand how to work together, or we're not going to overcome some of the barriers. And change is not delivered by one of those groups within our projects. It's got to be collaborative and it's got to be done together. So I showed you some quotes yesterday, and I thought these were some of the really smart ones that I heard while I was there, and I'm not repeating the ones from yesterday's that I mentioned, but the first one really resonated with me. How many years have we been talking about smart cities and smart technology? So one of the people who I happen to know works for TomTom said, we've got to move from being smart to being wise. And I thought that really resonated with me. We're kind of done talking about the smart things. And we need to take responsibility for the social aspect of the things that we're building. And again, we've heard that this last quote throughout the 2 days, You can't just see ITS from a technological perspective. It's got to be seen from a social perspective as well. And I loved the comment here, the second quote about we can't make a city smart by putting sensors in it. That's what I heard, I don't know, probably even 5 years ago. Let's put sensors everywhere and then it's a smart city. Who's going to use it? Is it just for government to measure things? You know, are you doing anything for the people who live there, work there? Anyway, so, and then this sort of quote here about trust and innovation, which I've heard throughout the 2 days here. It's a combination of the regulatory side of things, the technology side of things, and being able to create something at scale, not just hundreds of pilots that never amount to anything. And this quote about data, I think, was also really significant. We've always looked at achieving the availability of the data, but is it usable? Is it the right data? I was talking about results of surveys. If you've surveyed the wrong people about the wrong thing, it's going to skew what you're building. So, and that's it for me. Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Carol. It's been a delight to have you bookending this conference and also escaping the US for the 4th of July celebrations in an important year. So thank you very much. I'm now pleased to introduce Armin Gutka from the ITS NZ board for the awards ceremony. Thank you.
Ngā mihi nui kia koto katoa. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for staying on for this last session of the conference. I think it's really important, and I think it's really fantastic that everyone has stayed on. It's been a very long, I guess, but very impactful couple of days, so appreciate you staying on for this. As we do come to the close of T-Tech 2026, it's time to reflect on and recognise the hard work that's ongoing across our industry and our sector, day in and day out. The hard work, I guess the innovation, the energy and the dedication that everyone brings every day to address shared challenges and deliver better outcomes for New Zealand, but also more globally through ITS. The presentations and the stories we've heard over the past couple of days are testament to that, and they're what make T-Tech such a special place every year. I want to thank each and every one of you for your participation in that. And I think also it's important to really, I guess, thank our exhibitor sponsors and our members for your ongoing support. It's what makes this possible every year as well. So thank you for that. The T-Tech Awards are presented to those that have resonated the most with what T-Tech's about, and that is sharing, contributing and learning to the change journey that's happening every day. It's about really, I think, recognising the hard work that it takes to turn insights into actions and deliver better for our country, and using ITS. I think unicorns do exist based on what we've heard over the past couple of days. I think it's really important that we do apply ITS, that we spread the word and make it happen. And it's really about doing that in a better, faster and cheaper way for our society, the environment and our economy. So it's a pretty good message to sell, and I think it's something that we should be doing as much as we can, really. It's something that we should also be celebrating, and that's why we'll be presenting the awards now. I'll be calling out the names of the winners this year. I'll start with Third Equal. It was a pretty tight competition this year round. We had a pretty good judging panel that they really scored it based on both content as well as presentation. So I want to just say big thanks to our judging panel as well that's been working in the background. But now, if I do call out your name, please do come down, collect your certificate, and then please stay down here. We'll just grab a group photo at the end as well. So the third place, third equal, goes to Thomas Simony, EV Maritime, Successes and Challenges of a Data-Rich Electric Ferry. Do we have Toma still here with us in the audience somewhere? That's okay. If not, we'll pass it on to him later. The other third equal goes to Sean Hunter from Soma Digital. Open by default, why GTFS data quality matters more than ever. Do we have Sean here? Okay, someone maybe that wants to accept it on behalf of Sean? Cool, okay. Second place, Adam Johnson, Ruck on Rails, achieving Ruck compliance through timing, software, and re-engagement, not enforcement. And first place goes to Colin Shields in Aquil Iman, Tonkin and Taylor, and Auckland TLC, Smart and Effective Traffic Disruption Minimization. Please come down. Right. So that brings us to the conclusion of our awards session. I'll just, we'll grab a group photo shortly, but sorry. Yes, okay. No problem. But now I think I'll pass it on to Liz to close the day off for us. But we can go upstairs.
Thank you very much. We're getting right to the end of what I think has been the best T-Tech conference ever that I've been to, and I have been to a few. It's been really good to see the theme that Carol started off of starting with thinking about users front and center to continue as a theme for this conference for the end and a message for us all to take away. Congratulations to the winners. Please look at the email that Donna sent and use the survey to provide feedback on the ITS conference. Remember Kim's message that if you are going to come to the Asia Pacific conference next year, right now you can claim the cheapest ticket that will ever be offered for that. Go and scan the code that's down under the stairs if you haven't got that to take up that offer. It is a one-time short-term offer. And other than that, I wish you all a crisis-free and safe journey home, aided by all of the work that all of us do in this room to help make transport safer, more efficient, more pleasant to use, and better for the environment and better for all our communities. Thank you.